Hello, welcome to Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV. I'm your host, Alex Drain, and we want to remind you that today's episode of Top 10 Thursdays is brought to you by the Dandy Walker Alliance, a proud partner of Big Train Baseball, and you can visit dandy-walker.org to learn more. On this week's episode, we'll be looking at number 5 on our countdown of the greatest games in Bethesda Big Train history. This game took place on July 31st, 2016, and pitted the Big Train against the Baltimore Redbirds in Game 3 of that year's League Championship Series, a winner-take-all matchup for the championship in the Cal Ripken Collegiate Baseball League. For this episode, we'll be talking to former Big Train General Manager David Schneider, former Big Train broadcaster Kyle Brown, former Big Train social media intern Andrew Rogalski, and former Big Train pitcher Drew Strotman. So let's get started.
The 2016 Bethesda Big Train season was again managed by Sal Colangelo and saw the team compete consistently night in and night out. The team amassed a 28-12 record and were powered by a well-rounded roster that challenged opponents in every facet of the game.
You tell us something special coming into camp. Their pitching rotation was outstanding. They had Logan Gilbert, Mac Meyer, the closer. There were some guys in there who were really dominant, and that wasn't even to them yet. The hitters like Vinny Esposito and Clayton Daniel. I mean, those guys were able to consistently go up to the bat, and they produced every time they got to the plate. So the team all around was good. There was no really weak aspects. You had your starting pitching, you had relievers come in who were just lights out, and I just remember going through the season and they were just rolling teams. I mean, they would put up 10-plus runs in multiple games. And
I remember it was a good all-around team, really strong in all facets. The season got off to somewhat of a slow start, but I just remember they caught fire once we got into July. They were pretty much unstoppable down the stretch.
The team had one mission that summer, and it was greatly influenced by the experiences of the previous seasons. The Big Train had not won a Cal Ripken League championship since 2011, having lost 4 straight seasons in the League Championship Series to the Baltimore Redbirds. That hunger to return to the mountaintop fueled the team and its fan base, and gave the squad a singular mission.
Throughout that season, big thing was Redbirds had won the championship so many years in a row, and we wanted to reverse that. And so that was kind of the goal going into the year, was win a championship.
I mean, the Big Train Redbirds rivalry certainly went back years, because I think they had beaten us 4 years in a row, actually, before 2016 in the finals. So being in that championship matchup year after year, and finally getting it first with, let's see. I'm trying to remember if I think we split the regular season series 2-2. But they had won one more game than us. So they had home field advantage for the championship. But yeah, I would say overall, that the team and the organization in general was focused on the Redbirds and on defeating that particular opponent, just because they also had a very robust recruiting system. They were consistently able to bring in some of the best talent across the country.
History wasn't the only factor causing the Big Train to focus on Baltimore in 2016, as the Redbirds were a great team who had amassed the league's best record that season and boasted a deep roster and strong coaching staff that garnered respect from every team that they played.
Definitely when we're playing the Birds, it's a day to step up and be locked in. Most days with a few teams in that league, you kind of show up and you expect to just roll them. We knew it was always going to be a battle against the Birds. So Sal made it known from day one that, Redbirds game day is a day to step up and be locked in and be serious. So we knew that was always going to kind of be our top dog that we got to be ready to go against, and is going to give us the hardest time. We fully believe that we were the best team there, obviously. Heartbreak in 2015. I pitched in that championship series, didn't do well, or came into a close game and it just didn't quite go our way. That's just kind of the way baseball goes sometimes. But so there's definitely extra hunger going into 2016 to take down the Birds in the championship and get them back.
These were the two best teams in the division at the time over the last couple of years. So you could kind of tell that when they were going to meet together, it was going to be a clash, like I was saying. So I think you could tell that the players took a vested interest in this, and they kind of really got into it. And they realized that, our fans, as a Big Train fans, were super passionate. The same thing over with the Redbirds. I mean, every time during the whole series, it was packed. The stadiums were full, and you could kind of tell that these games actually meant something to these players. It wasn't just, another summer league game that they were playing in. They could tell that this rivalry kind of had some passion behind it and a history to it. So I think these players kind of took it seriously, and they went ahead and like I said, the fireworks began game 1 of the series.
Indeed, the series got off to a fast start, being a best 2-out-of-3 affair. Game 1 was in Bethesda at Shirley Povich Field and saw the Big Train notch a win before the series shifted to Baltimore for Game 2, a back-and-forth contest that saw the Redbirds win 7-6.
Game 1, we took a victory. We got a victory. The Big Train players worked hard. After losing to the Redbirds for so many years in a row in the championship, to get Game 1 under the belt and win that game was huge because it put Big Train in the driver's seat. Something that was kind of crazy about that LCS specifically, which often is the case with many of the LCS, due to rain during that time period. But the series was originally scheduled for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, with Thursday being at the Redbirds and Saturday being at the Redbirds, whereas Friday was home. The Thursday night game got rained out, so we had to switch the format of the LCS. And so it was home for the Big Train on Friday and then 2 away games in a row for the Redbirds. So, we won Game 1 at Povich. That was awesome. Game 2 was then, a tough battle, and it got rained out midway through, actually. So I think we picked up the end of Game 2 starting in like the 7th inning of the next day on Sunday. And so, kind of one thing I remember mostly about Game 2 is Big Train, I believe, was kind of in the driver's seat for the game. We brought in a new pitcher, and there was just some sort of like fluke play that ended up getting the Redbirds a few runs, taking the lead, and we were never able to catch up to them after that. So 1 and 2 was your typical, Big Train Redbirds battle. Each team played hard and got the best of each other one night.
Game 3 would also be played in Baltimore, and the season trajectory up to that point was not on the Big Train's side, as they had struggled in Baltimore, having lost all 3 games they played at Calvert Hall entering Game 3. The team acknowledged the difficulty of playing on the road, but were resolute in their confidence to win one on the road.
No fear. We knew the weirdest thing was that 10 o'clock, you couldn't play after 10 o'clock or whatever, and we kind of had some later start games. So sometimes 9-inning games can go a little over 3 hours, so they're always that like kind of game clock looming that you don't ever have in baseball otherwise. Other than that, it's not like there was any discomfort playing there. Turf field in Maryland in the summer, obviously very hot, but there's other fields like that in the league. You play that plenty of times, so it's not like that was any clear advantage. I would say probably the biggest thing in series like that is, they're a commuter series still, but it's, I don't know, hour and a half to get up to Baltimore, and then you're going through Baltimore and kind of having to deal with that commute as a player. So there's a bit of a little slight mental wear going there, and obviously for them coming down to Bethesda, same thing. So kind of that's the home field advantage, is dealing with travel to the game as opposed to just being able to focus on showing up to the field locked in.
They played at Calvert Hall, which is a high school up in Baltimore or outside of Baltimore area, and it's an interesting setup stadium. There's stands on that wrap from probably the first base dugout all the way to the third base. And like I said, it's kind of the nice thing about, I guess, Shirley Povich is that, the fans can go all around the field pretty much up to the outfield walls. So, if it's a busy game or a packed game, you're going to have kids running around. You're going to have, fans kind of packing it in. And with the Redbirds, it was a little bit different. So, I mean, you had your Redbird fans sitting on the left side, and then it was us on the right side. And like I said, Big Train, we ended up traveling pretty well to that game. But like you said, it was definitely a thing that a couple of guys had talked to us about, wanting to win on the road and wanting to win there. And, I think the stadium didn't have too much to play with it overall, but I still think that, by the third time and by the time they were playing in the third game, they kind of definitely had that feeling that, all right, it's time to win here.
Well, obviously, when you have the home field advantage, you can kind of tailor the game to your style of play. Like I remember with Baltimore, the field was all turf, which I think actually benefited the Redbirds a little bit because they were more of a free swinging team. So like with their style of hitting, I think their home field benefited them. Plus, like with just the environment in general, playing in Bethesda is obviously a big advantage for the Big Train because they have a lot of support from the local community. People coming out and support and just cheering them on. So the absence of that might have also been detrimental with playing in Baltimore.
Game 3 started quickly as Big Train starter Johnny York surrendered a double to begin the game, which came around to score in the bottom of the first, putting Baltimore on top 1-0. It took until the fourth inning for the Big Train to get on the scoreboard, a rally that began with Clayton Daniel.
Oh man, he tore it up that year. I think he was fresh off being like first team All-American out of, is it Jackson State? I'm not even sure. Small school I know he came from. Obviously, me coming from St. Mary's, small school. It's not like I have any right to call somebody out on a small school, but it felt like he couldn't get out all year that summer.
I mean, that kid could just rake. All he did was get the bat and the ball and get on base. He was a great hitter, and it was kind of surprising because he came from Jacksonville State, and I think that he had been in the leadoff spot at Jacksonville State, but seeing him in Big Train, something just clicked from day one, and you can kind of tell that he was really good at taking pitches and taking borderline pitches, and then just his overall speed. I mean, you got anything on the infield, and if there was any type of fumbling with the ball or anything like that, he was most likely going to be safe at first. He had that type of speed to kind of make up for that. So he played. I mean, he was great, and also with his glove at second base, he could really. I don't really remember any errors from him. He was pretty mechanical and was able to kind of get his job done.
Daniel was plunked to begin the inning, which was then followed by a double from none other than the league's most dangerous player, Vinny Esposito.
It was the year of Vinny Esposito. He was just, until that point, where I'd been an intern with Big Train for 2 years and assistant GM for 1 year. Vinny was the best offensive player I'd seen up to that point. It just seemed like he was going to get a double or home run every at bat, and that was something really special to see.
The stretch in July, he had one of the most phenomenal hitting streaks that I think I've ever seen at any level. I mean, he was just hitting the ball out of the park constantly. Just like, I don't know how he did it. I mean, it seemed like every time he came up to bat, there was a chance he was gonna put one over the fence. Just an unbelievable display of hitting. And he actually, I remember his walk-up song was "Your Love" by the Outfield, and that almost became like the theme song of the 2016 Big Train.
With runners on second and third, the Big Train were threatening, and they got the big hit they needed, coming from right fielder Cody Brown, who laced a single and brought home 2 runners to put Bethesda on top for the first time, 2-1.
He was an excellent player. Was consistently batting leadoff or near the top of the order for us. He was a guy who would always see a lot of pitches. He'd drive pitch counts up. He'd drive pitchers crazy.
Cody Brown, as well as a couple or few other guys on that team, were instrumental to Big Train. What was special about Cody is I believe it was his 3rd year with Big Train. So he'd spent 2 summers losing the championship to the Redbirds. Cody was the heart and soul of the team. I believe he won the Hustle Award that year. He was someone who could come in, he would grind out at bats, he would steal bases, he would steal home, he would make diving plays in the outfield. You wanted him on your team, and you wanted him to be in a position to make a play because you knew he would.
The Big Train weren't done yet, though, as 2 more base runners would get aboard, and with the sacks packed and 2 outs, catcher Austin Hale delivered a 2 RBI single to put the Big Train ahead 4-1. It was a surprising display of hitting for a player normally known for his defense.
Yeah, he was solid. He was a really good defensive catcher, good guy to throw to, and then would mix in a couple multi-hit games and double or two, maybe sneak one out of the yard. But another good dude that was just ready to play all summer.
Austin, he had that RBI single in the game, and that was great. But the thing that is funny about Austin is that he's a great defensive catcher. I think he's known more for being able to sit behind the plate and make the calls for the catchers, and he was great at tagging kids out, if they're trying to steal. So it was kind of funny being able to see him come through in the clutch. And, he has a clutch gene in him, no doubt, but it was fun to be able to see him get that hit. But it was just different. I was used to him in more of a defensive role, and who's known more kind of in that. Other that season, we had Justin Morris as well behind the plate, and he was kind of the offensive guy. So like you said, it's interesting. And, I was happy for Austin that he was able to come through clutch and get the RBI in that game for sure.
The Redbirds would end the inning thereafter, but Bethesda had done their damage. Baltimore picked up a run in the fifth, but no more, and when Johnny York's outing was complete, he had stitched together 6 innings of 2-run baseball and handed a 4-2 lead off to the bullpen, an admirable effort for a poised starter.
He's just what we would consider in the baseball world as a lefty thumber or pitchability specialist. Just like a true pitcher, can control the baseball, not necessarily going to overpower anybody, but makes his speeds very, very well. So somebody that you are confident in a playoff environment with an extra high intensity game can just step up there and still do what he knows how to do. So, I'm not at all surprised that Johnny went out and had a good day that day.
Johnny was definitely somebody you want on the hill. He didn't throw the hardest, but he was able to place the ball all over the strike zone. You'd throw the ball and you wouldn't know which way it was diving, which way it was going. He probably had 4 different fastballs coming, from the same arm slot, but went different directions, were different speeds. So you felt really good about him going on the mound because you knew what you were going to get, a strike thrower who forced ground ball outs and would make it tough for the opposing hitters to get anything off of him.
Sal Colangelo turned to starter Drew Strotman out of the pen to try and lock down the game in multiple innings of relief. Strotman presented a different sort of challenge for the Redbirds, and he had been one of Bethesda's most consistent arms throughout the summer.
Anytime I was in Bethesda, I was placed in a starter role throughout the regular season. So I'd been starting all season for Big Train. At college, I had kind of been bounced between a weekday starter or a spot start and being in the bullpen on the weekends. So that sort of bullpen role wasn't completely new to me, but in terms of that summer specifically, it was something that I hadn't done for a couple months. But pitching is pitching. Doesn't really matter the inning or the score. Your job is still the same thing. So I was confident to get out there and follow up Johnny. Me and Johnny, kind of him being a lefty, that mixes speeds really well. And then I throw a little bit harder as a righty. We have very different game plans, so it's not like I was following up somebody that was very similar to me and the Redbirds are going to be pretty comfortable. It was definitely going to be a change of pace. So I was confident with that, comfortable, and I was glad that Sal gave me the ball, not somebody else.
Well, he was usually a starter. He'd be in the rotation. I remember it was York, Strotman, and then a few other pitchers would kind of frequently be starting. Logan Gilbert was another one, Alex Calvert. But Strotman out of the bullpen, he was also one of our best pitchers that year. So, with Game 3, everything on the line, you kind of just go with whoever's available. And he did a great job shutting him down out of the bullpen. He had a great season. He had been with the team for several years.
Strotman got through the 7th in order, but then encountered trouble in the 8th, surrendering a home run to make the score 4-3, and then the tying run got on before he wiggled out of a jam. Heading into the 9th, Strotman was protecting a 1-run lead and began to lean heavily on his off-speed stuff.
My pitching career at the time, I was very like slider heavy was my best pitch for sure. So that was always going to be working. So I'd probably give a home run on a fastball. And then when it came down to really like pressure situation at the end of the game, I probably leaned heavy on the slider. And I remember specifically last batter of the game was just pretty much all sliders.
In the bottom of the ninth, and with the team 3 outs from the elusive title, Strotman put the leadoff runner aboard, and he quickly moved up to second, putting the big train in another jam, leaving some in the crowd nervous.
There was definitely a nerve, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the pitching coach came out from Big Train to go talk and kind of settle them down, and they kind of made up a game plan to go ahead and attack the rest of that inning and the rest of the batters. But I remember, like you said, you could tell that our Big Train fans were nervous, and you could almost kind of feel that momentum swinging. But he was able to kind of compose himself.
Strotman did his job, though, striking out the last 2 batters of the game and earning the save on a 4-3 victory. With that win, the Big Train were coronated the 2016 Cal Ripken League champions, and it was jubilation on the field as a sense of relief and ecstasy swept the players and their fans.
Those on-field dog piles are unmatched per my experience with, energy. It's a group of guys that you've spent the summer with and had just a blast building memories with. Obviously the intensity is an all-time high and we all want to win. So that last out is just giant breath of relief and let's celebrate. So remember I got my glove out of there as quickly as I could. I chucked it over kind of back towards our dugout. Gave my catcher a big hug. And then at that point you just kind of brace for the bottom of the dog pile.
It was amazing, really amazing. Of course, you'd rather win on the home field, but to do it on Baltimore's turf after losing to them for so many years in a row, it was definitely special. And like I mentioned earlier, Big Train fan base travels well, so we had a huge crowd there that was, ecstatic about the victory. And like I mentioned earlier, people like Justin Morris, Cody Brown, Logan Farrar, Drew Strotman, maybe a couple others, they'd been on the team before. They'd been on Big Train before, and they'd, felt the loss to the Redbirds. And so just having this final moment, especially for Cody Brown and Logan Farrar, who were seniors, this was the end of their summer baseball road. It was awesome and bittersweet for them to be able to get this championship. So I definitely remember a lot of hugging, a lot of, happiness, and just, finally we got this back to Big Train. And, it's just a happy celebration overall.
I mean, it felt like the pressure had been off of us because we had been losing to the Redbirds for the last 4 years prior to that. And kind of how I was mentioned, Coach, manager Colangelo, he was getting on the guys about it. He was tired of losing to these guys, and he made that kind of a mission throughout the season that when we play the Redbirds, we're going to go ahead and win it. So, just the overall excitement and the energy that the players had, you could feel it. They, like I said earlier, they took this away from just being a normal summer league that they joined to then go ahead and they treat it as something that's important to them, and they played their heart out, that whole series and that whole game. So, the overall excitement was crazy, and just being able to win it at their place, celebrate on their field, it was definitely nice, for the rivalry to add on, and the bummer that the Redbirds packed up shop.
It was amazing. We had obviously the team celebrating on the field, and eventually some of the other people who were involved in the season, so the interns and some other folks who had done a lot of work for the team that year also got to go on the field and like take pictures with the players and with the trophy and all that good stuff. It was just like really great to finally be able to win. I know that lately, like the Big Train has just been winning it all, like every year. I think they've won it all every year since that season. But it had been a while at the time.
That's it for this week's episode of Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV. As always, I want to extend my thank you to all of our contributors who helped out in this week's episode, as well as to all of you for watching. Next week, we'll be looking at number 4 on the countdown of the top 10 greatest games in Bethesda Big Train history, our second contest from 2017. Until then, stay tuned for more great content on Big Train TV, and so long.
1 in 10,000 children are born with a brain malformation known as Dandy-Walker syndrome. Dandy Walker can cause enlargement of the skull, lack of muscle control, and other developmental challenges. More research is needed, but we do know that early therapy helps many live healthier, fuller lives. 1 in 10,000 may not seem like a lot unless your child is the one. Learn more, find help, and help others. Visit dandy-walker.org.